Hey, I'm Emma, and 6 months ago, I was dating this really cool guy. His name was Ronaldo, and he was just like Russell Brand. Totally off the wall and always saying crazy things, but also couldn't stop flirting with other girls. But that never bothered me because he said I was the only one for him, and I believed it. When he asked me to be his girlfriend, I was ecstatic, and we immediately moved together. But one day he told me his ex-girlfriend Laura had sent him a message. It said, "I forgive you for everything. I want to get back with you, and I can't live without you." I was glad he showed me the text, but I never expected what came next. He said he wanted me to be his first girlfriend, and he wanted Laura to be his second girlfriend. Wow! Any other guy, I would have said no, but Ronaldo was so damn charming, and I was completely addicted to him. That's why I agreed. I just couldn't bear the thought of being without him. And at least I was still the first girlfriend, right? Well, when Laura moved in, it was super awkward. She was gorgeous, just like a model, and straight away, I was worried Ronaldo would get bored with me and only want to be with her. But then Ronaldo introduced us to each other, and I don't want to go into the details. Anyway, you can imagine how crazy it all was. But then the problem started. Laura was always trying to get Ronaldo to tell me to leave so she could be alone with him. It drove me nuts. We were always arguing over how much time we would each have with him. Of course, Ronaldo loved that we were fighting over him. He always had a smirk on his face when we were arguing, and he always said, "Don't worry, ladies, there's enough of me for both of you." But then one day she accidentally put my colored and white clothes into the same washing load, ruining all my white clothes. I was furious. I stopped talking to her and did something very bad with her toothbrush, but I'd better not tell you what I did with it. But let's just say I did it more than once. In the end, none of it mattered, because soon after, Ronaldo broke up with both of us. He said he had to move on, but I knew he just grew tired of us. I was upset, but part of me was also relieved. I didn't have to deal with sharing my boyfriend anymore. But here's the thing about Ronaldo. I always kinda knew our relationship wasn't going to last forever. He's just not the kind of guy you settle down and build a family with. But still, I don't regret staying with him for as long as I did. He was always clear about what he wanted, never lied to me, and I had a lot of fun. If everyone was like Ronaldo, the world would be chaos. But still, I wish more guys were as free-spirited as him. It's so sexy, and life was never boring with him. Today, I still miss him, but I've already accepted that I'll never meet someone like him again. But that's life, I guess. You can't have everything, but luckily you also don't need everything to live a happy life. I think that finding Mr. Perfect is impossible. Everyone has flaws. I know I do. I don't work out, I eat crappy food, I'm really grumpy first thing in the morning. So instead of worrying about finding the perfect guy, I'll look for someone who treats me well and who's interested in a serious long-term relationship. Hey, I'm Maria, and I started dating my boyfriend Rubio in the 10th grade. I thought we were the perfect couple. I mean, we were both honor students, and we even played Romeo and Juliet in our school play. I know it sounds crazy, but although we were young, I was already imagining us getting married someday and having a bunch of kids. But after about a year of dating, Rubio's behavior changed. Suddenly, he always put his phone on airplane mode when we met. It was as if he was scared of someone sending him an SMS or calling him while I was there. When I asked him why he was suddenly using airplane mode, he told me he didn't want to be distracted while he was with me. I mean, that was sweet and all, but he never used to do it before, and I wasn't sure I believed him. Then he started to come up with excuses about why he didn't have time to see me on the weekends. He usually said he had to study, but then I'd see him constantly on Instagram. It just didn't add up. And I started to worry he was seeing another girl behind my back. Of course, I hoped he was being faithful and honest, but I couldn't stop worrying. So I decided to take things into my own hands and find out the truth. I asked my friend Stacy to add Rubio on Snapchat. He immediately responded to her request, and they started talking. Stacy was very flirtatious, and after just 2 days of chatting, she asked my boyfriend Rubio on a date. And he said yes. Wow, I was freaking mad, but afterwards Stacy and I made a plan for me to show up at their date with a camera. I wanted to share the photos on Instagram so the whole world would see that he was a lying cheater. But when I arrived at their date and confronted Rubio, he acted all cool and said he knew all along that I'd set him up, so he'd only gone to teach me a lesson. He sounded so confident that, for a moment, I believed him. But then I asked him to show me his phone so I could check if he was chatting with any other girls. Rubio refused and told me I was a bad girlfriend for not trusting him. We had a huge fight right in the middle of the restaurant. But it didn't matter what I said. Rubio always had a smart answer for me. He refused to admit he'd been cheating, but I knew I couldn't trust him anymore. That's why I told him it was over between us. I hoped he'd be devastated at the thought of losing me and beg me to stay. But he just stared at me for a few seconds before shaking his head saying, "Whatever, I don't care." So, do I recommend you set up your boyfriend like this? No. Now I look back, I can see it was immature of me to play games, but if there are any signs your boyfriend is cheating on you, you might want to do some detective work and handle it in private. But hey, Rubio and I were both very young, and I guess it's normal that we were both a bit immature. However, next time I date someone, I will make sure it's someone I can trust. If I ever get suspicious, I'll talk to him about it. And if I don't get the answers I need, I'll end it. I had my first boyfriend when I was 17. His name was Michael, and he was sort of the complete opposite of me. While I was working hard to get good grades, he didn't care about school at all. He was pretty smart, though. Much smarter than me. Whenever I was with him, he made me feel safe. Like there was one time when we were in a trade station late at night, and 2 bad-looking guys came over to us. I was so scared, but Michael stayed cool and he just talked to them until they were all laughing. I never saw him nervous or afraid. He was always charming and confident. That's why so many girls in my school were after him. When I finally invited him over for dinner with my parents, I was really nervous because I knew he wasn't the kind of guy my parents would like. I asked Michael to behave and be polite, but when he arrived he was making jokes and just having fun like always. I suppose he was just being himself, and he did make me and my mom laugh a lot. I could tell my dad felt disrespected, though. He started to ask questions like, "How's school going? Do you have any plans for the future?" Michael didn't even try to impress my dad. He said he planned on becoming a rock star. We all kind of knew he was joking, but Dad didn't find it funny. At the same time, he was very charming with Mom and complimented her a ton. Mom really liked him, and that made Dad even angrier. I know it sounds weird, but the more Michael acted like a bad boy, the more I was attracted to him. When he left, my dad turned to me and said he forbade me to ever see him again. I thought he was just saying it in the heat of the moment, so I didn't think much about it. But when I tried to go out and meet Michael the next day, Dad locked the door and said I wasn't allowed to go out after school until I turned 18. He said I had to focus on my studies, not go out with some boy. My 18th birthday was still 6 months away. It was so unfair. I hadn't done anything wrong, so I decided to sneak out anyway. After I left, I sent Dad a text to tell him I'd be back at 8 and not to worry. My date with Michael was fun, and he was really understanding when I said I had to go home, but I was really nervous when I came back home. Dad was already waiting for me, and I was expecting him to yell at me, but to my surprise, he apologized. He said he'd been wrong to try to ban me from seeing Michael, and I was old enough to decide for myself who I dated. He finished by warning me to be careful, though. I hugged him and told him he was the best dad in the world. Now, I knew Dad was okay with me seeing Michael, so we carried on dating. But over the next few months, I started to notice things I just couldn't accept. For example, one time he laughed when he saw a homeless person slip on ice. Another time we accidentally left a restaurant without paying. I knew the waitress would have to pay for our food out of her own money, but he refused to go back and pay, saying we deserved a free meal. So I had to go back and do it for him. The most irresponsible thing he did, though, was to get a dog, even though he didn't have enough time to walk him or even enough money to buy him proper dog food. Instead, he just threw the dog out in the yard to walk himself and fed him scraps of his own food. The poor dog was so skinny you could see his ribs. That's when I realized that Michael was sort of a jerk. He was irresponsible and didn't seem to care about other people or animals. I finally decided to break up with him. Dad was right. I deserved better. Luckily, there was no big fight. Michael seemed a bit surprised, but didn't seem to mind either. So I asked if I could adopt his dog. To my relief, he said yes. So even though I don't have a boyfriend anymore, our family has a new member, and Dad also seems quite happy to have me back. Hey, I'm Lima, and growing up, I always wanted to be different. I guess that's why I became a goth. I still remember the first day I came to school wearing all black. Everyone looked at me, and I even heard one kid say, "I think she worships the devil." It only showed how judgmental people were. Of course, I've never worshipped the devil, and in fact, I was a pretty normal girl that liked to watch series like Very Odd Parents and The Simpsons. But what I loved about being a goth was all the attention I got. Maybe I wasn't the prettiest girl, but I sure stood out the most. And that was no wonder, because I'd spend hours over my makeup and then choosing the perfect outfit to create the right look. But one day, a guy came up to me on the street and asked if I'd ever thought about modeling. I said no. I mean, when was the last time you saw a goth on the cover of Vogue? But he said he worked at a modeling agency and my body and bone structure were perfect for modeling. When he told me I could also make a lot of money, I immediately said yes. But geez, if I'd known then what I know now, I would have run away fast as possible. Obviously, the goth look had to go. I needed to look like a professional model and get photos taken for my portfolio. A couple months later, I booked my first job, a photo shoot for a makeup company. I felt so uncomfortable being in front of the camera, but I pushed through. And when I got paid, I felt amazing, even though it was just a few $100s. But over the next 3 years, my career really took off, and I had lots of clients who wanted to book me, and suddenly, I was traveling all over the world from New York to London to Milan. And right on my 18th birthday, I was walking the catwalk for the first time in Italy wearing a beautiful white dress. It was such a rush. Even though I felt intimidated by all the other models, they were so experienced and looked so amazing. But there is also a dark side to the modeling world. Most of us models are very insecure. Because every day, we're judged solely on our looks, and if we don't look perfect, we don't find jobs. That's why I wear more makeup now than I did when I was a goth. Without it, I feel insecure and ugly. However, the worst thing about modeling is that I don't make as much money as I thought I would. Sure, I get to work all over the world, but even though I'm reasonably successful, I always worry about whether I'm going to book another job. It's stressful, and unless you become a real supermodel, you won't make that much money because you have to spend so much on your appearance. And then once you hit your late 20s, your career is probably over anyway. I'm not saying that modeling is a terrible job, just that for most girls, it's not the dream job they think it is. It's a ruthless industry, and people will try to take advantage of you all the time. If I could go back in time, I'd do something else, like teaching or becoming a lawyer, because I'd love to help other people and do something that has an impact. But hey, I guess it's never too late to go back to college. Hey, I'm Tessa, and my brother Theo always wants to feel special and important. I guess that's why he suddenly became a vegan, even though he had never cared about animal rights before. At first, I tried to ignore him, but he kept talking about how meat was murder, and I deserved to burn in hell just because I ate a hamburger. Obviously, I told him to f off. I mean, it's just a burger, right? But then he said, "You don't understand how much those animals suffer. I bet my next birthday and Christmas present that if you lived like an industrial pig for just 1 week, you would become a vegetarian afterwards and never eat meat again." Well, it was summer vacation and I had nothing better to do, so I agreed to his stupid bet. 2 days later, he had built a cage for me in our barn. It was so tiny, and when I went inside, I could only stand straight or lie down, but there was no space to move or walk around. And then my brother threw a load of mud on me to make things more realistic. It was disgusting, but I quickly got used to it. Much worse was the boredom. I mean, I had no phone and no one to talk to. After 4 long hours, I called my brother Theo because I needed to go to the toilet. But he said that I wasn't allowed to do that because pigs like me live and sleep in their own feces. I told him to fuck off again, but in the end, we came to a compromise. I could use the bathroom twice a day if Theo could dump pig shit from our neighbor's farm on me. Oh man, I was so naive. Theo didn't just get pig shit, he also mixed it with water so it went everywhere on my body. It was so gross. But I couldn't complain because it was part of the deal. And industrial pigs really do live in their own feces. Their living conditions are awful. To make things worse, on the 3rd day, I got a cold. I mean, no wonder. The only reason industrial pigs don't get sick is because they're pumped full of antibiotics and medicine. At some point, our dog, Popo, sneaked into the barn, and when he saw me, he started barking because he was so worried about me. In that moment, I realized that if someone put their dog in a cage and left them in their own filth, that they would go to prison for animal abuse. And there is no reason to treat a dog better than a pig. I mean, did you know that pigs are more intelligent than dogs?